speaker is Rabea Gransberger. So please join me in a warm applause. And Rabea is here to help you get the most out of your IDE. So take it away, Rabea.
Okay, hello and welcome to my talk, Effective IDE Usage, which will cover all the three main IDEs, Eclipse, IntelliJ, and NetBeans. Let me tell you something about me first. I'm Rabea. I've studied computer science at the University of Bremen and completed it with a diploma in 2008. And currently I'm also working in Bremen for a very small software company. Nobody knows about it. I'm mainly working with Eclipse technology, so we are creating a product which is mainly based on Eclipse RCP. And I'm a passionate Java developer with a focus on clean code. So what we're going to do today, the motivation for my talk was very simple. I've seen far too many developers which are really typing too much in their IDEs. They are not really using the features, but only using it as a very simple text editor. So features like Content Assist and Quick Fix are not used. And they are complaining that their IDE can't do a certain thing, and this is just because they're using the wrong settings, because your IDE gives you some good defaults if you just install it freshly, but you should probably tune some settings according to your programming style, so your IDE can really be of some use for you. So, as I said before, I'm going to show the stuff today in Eclipse, IntelliJ, and NetBeans. And first, I'd like to know how many users we have for each IDE here, which are mainly using the IDE for their daily work. So, let's have a hands up. How many users do we have for Eclipse in this room? Wow. Most of them. And how many do we have for IntelliJ? Main work. You can't use both for your main work, right? All right, so how many do use NetBeans? Okay, hardly no one. All right. So let's start with a short disclaimer first. So this is no introduction to IDEs in general, but if you've never worked with an IDE before, I think you will still get the concepts. I will not compare the IDEs. I will just show some common features between the IDEs, which will cover the Java Standard Edition development tools. So this is mainly about the .java files and not the JSP files or etc. But the concepts apply to all of them. So what you learn here, you can also apply to other development. I can't cover all the features we have because we only have like 50 minutes, and there's some more information in my slides. You can download them shortly after the talk. This will not be a do you know the shortcut talk, but yeah, we can all imagine that it's much faster to use shortcuts in your IDE. I will show the shortcuts in live demos. So, but it's easy for you to follow them. I've modified a nice little plugin for Eclipse, which is called Mousefeed. And so please remember the colors I've used here. So the blue is for Eclipse. So if you're mainly an Eclipse user, you will find everything which is covered for Eclipse with the blue Eclipse icon. For IntelliJ, we have the purple JI, and for NetBeans, we have the red N. This is also used throughout the talk, so you can follow the shortcuts in a small window in the demo sessions, and I will show the shortcuts for all three IDEs. Hopefully I got it right. It's not that easy. So, as I said, I will do the demos in Eclipse because I do my daily work in Eclipse, so it's much easier for me to do it over there. So now let's start with a general IDE setup. It's most importantly used when you're working in a team on the project, or if you just want to share settings with your whole company. Because if you're working in a team, everybody should use the same formatting settings. And if anybody does not use the same formatting settings, you get some nice false changes in your version control system. You don't want to see them. So how can you share settings? The easiest option is to just export them from your IDE instance, send them by email to your coworkers, and they can import it. But if you change anything in your settings, you have to send the mail again, and they have to re-import it again, and so this can end up in a big mess. You probably don't want to do that. So for IntelliJ and Eclipse, there's another option. So for Eclipse, you can, for example, put an extra line in your Eclipse ini file, the main initialization file for Eclipse. You just put in a new line minus plugin customization, and then you have a customization ini file, which will contain the settings everybody should use. They can still override the settings, but this is the main settings the IDE will use from now on. For IntelliJ, there's two different options. JetBrains has a configuration server, which can be used to share settings between different users. So if they all log in with the same account, that should work. Or you can share the main settings via version control. Just check on some files into version control, which IntelliJ generates, and you'll be fine. There's detailed instructions in my slides. You can download them later. So what if you're working on different projects in your work environment? So you're part of a project for, I don't know, invoicing beer, and another project for creating websites for motorbikes. So you're working on two different projects. You probably want to open up two different IDE instances. So you have them running multiply, and you can just switch between the different projects. So if you're a customer of project one calls, then you just switch to the right IDE instance. There's how you can do it. So for example, Eclipse, a project set, it's called a workspace, essentially. And you can have a minus data parameter on which you just pass in on your workspace, and then you just give it the workspace name. There's also another nice feature. You can give a workspace a name. So if you go into the preferences, there's also a workspace name, which will show up nicely in your taskbar. We will see it shortly. In IntelliJ, we have projects. So if you want to start IntelliJ with a certain project, you just pass the folder for the project as a parameter, and we'll start up with this project. And for NetBeans, we have, it's called userdirs. So you have the -- userdir and then the folder name. And what I usually do is, let me quickly show it. I usually do it that way, that I have a little folder here. So I can just start. Can you see it? Yeah, it's very small, but you can just I can just start different Eclipse instances, for example, here. So I have the JFocus and an instance for my user group, and I just can click them and start them from here directly. So I don't have this nasty workspace launcher, which makes everything very slow. And here's you can see I gave the workspace different names, so I can read it directly here. Let me try out this pointer. So here you have the JFocus name, and here you have the Java user group name, so you can easily distinguish them. So let's go back to the slides. Right. So what I also like to do, also when I'm working on different project sets, is to change the appearance of my IDE. You can change it for IntelliJ. You can certainly only change it as a general setting, so it will apply to all the IDE instances you're running. For NetBeans and Eclipse, you can set it per workspace or per project set, and you can just change the theme how you like it to be. So I can easily distinguish my different workspaces also by the color I have. So I can easily see, even if I don't read the name, okay, this might be the wrong project I'm in because it really has a different color. You can also customize the editor or the console windows. So you can, for example, just have a dark theme in the editor. Updates, very important stuff, because we all installed a lot of plugins in our IDEs to help us in our daily work. So we really want to preserve the plugins when we have to install a new update. For Eclipse and IntelliJ, it tries to install the updates when possible. For major releases, you normally have to download the installer again and reinstall everything. For NetBeans, you always have to download a new installer, but it will pick up your old settings and your old plugins. So for Eclipse, there's also other options. For example, you can install from command line, or you can export your plugins beforehand and re-import them again in the new instance. Or there's a nice little service called Yoxos, where you can just create a profile with all the plugins you like to have, and even upgrade to new versions, directly download them for different platforms, etc. Let's go to the settings and menus of your IDE. I just like to point out that's probably the biggest difference between the IDEs. One calls it preferences, the other calls it settings, the other calls it options. That's probably the biggest difference they have. What you can do in the settings, what I like to point out is here, you, for example, in Eclipse or in IntelliJ and in NetBeans, you can have a search text. And you just put in the search text, and it will show you the settings which refer to the search text. So it's easy to find them, even if you're working with another IDE you're not used to. It's easy to find the options that way. So if you're looking for the shortcuts, here's how you do that. What's really the worst thing which can happen is, even if you're working with a version control system, what does happen if you did some really important changes and then you accidentally delete them? That's really one of the baddest things which can happen. If you have done some really difficult work, you don't want to do it again. Your IDE keeps a local history of all files you have in your file system. So even if you didn't check them into version control in your normal version control system yet, there's a local history on your file system. I really advise you to probably change the default settings for the local history. We can see here the defaults for Eclipse is just to keep the files for 7 days. You probably want to set it to 30 days or something, because nowadays a hard disk drive isn't really a problem, but losing changes is a really bad problem. So you probably want to change these settings. So if you deleted a file accidentally, you can get it back by just triggering the context menu on the parent folder, and then you can restore the file from your local history. Yeah, the menus. At least I mostly only look in the context menu. But we have a nice little example here. For example, in Eclipse, if you trigger the context menu on a Java editor file, you have these options, references and declarations. If you go to the main menu, to the search part, then you have not only references and declarations, you can also look for implementers, you can have a look for read and write access to your fields, and you can also look for a test referring to your class. So I'd really advise you to probably have a look at the main menu too, not only the context menu. There might be some features hidden there. Okay, then let's start with the first demo part. I'm going to show you the basics and some nice features of the editor, which every IDE should have. Right, let's start first with an existing class. So I'm going to open up an existing class by having the control type feature. Here you can see my nice little, let me show it again. My nice little mouse feed plugin with the Eclipse shortcut, the IntelliJ shortcut, and the NetBeans shortcut. So have a look over there if you like to follow what I'm doing. I'm trying to explain it, but I might get the shortcuts wrong. So, okay, let's open up the type, and like to open the class Java2D-Demo. The nice little feature is that you only have to type the uppercase letters of the word. So I can put in Java2D. There's a lot of Java 2D, sadly, because we have this Java 2D stuff in my workspace right now. But I can also refine the search and say Java 2 demo, and here you can see it's highlighted what I was looking for. So I can quickly open my class that way. And Eclipse is very nasty. Well, there's a discussion going on if a line number should be on by default or not. I really like to have the line numbers, so I usually turn them on. And yeah, this editor is very small like that, so I usually double-click to maximize it. Now I want to quickly search for a method. What I can do is have an incremental find mode, which is triggered with Control J in Eclipse, for example, and then I'm looking for a method called create menu bar. And down here you can see here's my search text. And so if I want to go to the next instance for create, I can just trigger the Control J again and cycle through the stuff it finds. So it's really an incremental find mode. If you go on typing, it will directly jump to the next entry. So now I really like to edit the create menu bar method, but I don't like to lose my context, which I'm currently in, which I'm currently, from where I'm calling the method. So I'm quickly open up a new editor for the same type. So now I have two editors here. This is triggered via the context menu, it doesn't have a shortcut. And I just move the editors side by side. And then I quickly jump with open declaration to my create menu bar method. Now I have them side by side and can have a look, okay, here's what I'm doing in my method and here's my calling context. It's also very nice if you do some refactoring stuff with methods which are long. One is at the top of the file and the other one is down below at the file and you want to see them next to each other. All right. Then let's have a look. If you, for example, have a CSV file, here's another nice feature I want to show first is you can have external tools included in your IDE. So I just want to open up the Windows Explorer here on my current source folder. So I just mark the source folder and I have an Explorer action here, which will directly open up the source folder. There's also instructions in my slides how to do that. So here in my slides, I have some files. And what I see first here, here's still a bug. Consider this as a bug tracker here. So here's a bug 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see if we already have some hints in our source code for this bug. And I can use Control 3 in Eclipse, which is quick access, for example. I can just type in here, and right now I want to open the task window. So this always works if you want to open up a view, if you want to trigger a command. This always works. It's Control 3. And now we open up the tasks window. So with the tasks, you can just put in some comment and you have a special marker here called fix me. You can also call it to do, or you can think about something of your own. You can set it up on the preferences and they will show up here in the task window. And now I have here some bug fix me to do. I normally put in some bug numbers, so I have some reference for later. So this is bug 1, 2, 3, 4. There's something wrong with the color convert. Okay, and in our bug tracker we have an exception stack trace. So let's copy the exception stack trace. And in the console window, we have some extra nice menu and can open up a stack trace console and paste in the stack trace we just got from our bug. And then we have some nice highlighting. We are used to it from the normal console window and we can just jump to the line where the error just happened. And we see, okay, there's an exception shown. This shouldn't be here, so we can just remove it. Okay, what about comparing files? If I did some changes locally to my files and I want to compare them locally, for example, I have the Java 2D demo here and a copy of it. Let's see what I changed in the copy. With the context menu, I can say compare with each other. So I have the local copies of my files next to each other. And let's see what the changes are. I have some nice little markers here, and I can jump to the changes. Okay, I have just changed the English labels to the German labels. Well, I probably don't need that at this conference, so I can just delete the file, which was the wrong file. I didn't delete the copy. So what I said earlier, I can get it back from local history. So here was my file. I go to the parent folder, trigger the context menu and say restore from local history. And here's my nice little file, and I can say restore. Everything is good again. Okay, then let's have some fun with another file I have in here, which is a CSV file with some names in it. And I like to use it in a map in my source code. So let's quickly go to my editor here. And there's a map from string to string, which really resembles the layout of my CSV file here. So I just copy over the changes and I want to have them in my map. I just paste them here. That doesn't really look nice and I don't really want to change it all by hand manually. What I can do is trigger a block selection mode. What the block selection mode does is, you can see it shortly, I just can type in multiple lines in one go. So Then I just have the put here, and I can replace the semicolon with a simple comma, replace all. Then I go to the end of the line. There's nothing here at the end of the line, but I still can mark it at the end of the line. And I just put in the closing statements, and I have some save actions on. The save action will reformat my code when I save, so I just save it, and I'm done. Go out of the block selection mode again. So this is really nice if you want to do a couple of changes in lines which are below each other. Right, let's get back to my presentation. So, at least it was in my extract, so I guess you're all here to find out how you can get rid of this nasty java.awt.List import. What you usually have when you just want to have a java.util.List. Let me show the example here. So in my other workspace I have a file and I have this list here. So normally when I trigger the organize imports, it will show me up java.util.List and java.awt.List. I don't use AWT, so I don't need this import ever again. Right, so what I can tell my IDE is, please filter out this import altogether. So I have in the IDEs, I have it called a type filter, and I just put in the java.awt.star package as a type filter, and it will never show me up any imports of the java.awt again. So this is really nice if you don't need it. You can also have organized imports on paste. It's usually automatically on in Eclipse and NetBeans. So if you're copying over some code from one file to another and you want your imports to be preserved, then you can toggle it also on in IntelliJ. You might also want to adjust the number of imports needed for a star. So if you organize your imports, it will put in a star for normal or static imports. You can also adjust the settings, the number of types it should resemble to a star. Okay, syntax coloring. So for syntax coloring, what you can do with syntax coloring, I think it's a bit underestimated. What I usually do, for example, is for autoboxing and unboxing, I want to directly see it in my editor if I might have a boxing or unboxing problem later. Because if you have here, for example, in this method, we are passing in an integer parameter. If this parameter is null, we get a nasty null point exception at this location. And I've set my IDE so it will have this parameter marked in red because it's an auto unboxing. And you can see here when I just call the method manually, it will just stay the same color. So this is really nice because I already had some nasty null point exceptions, really hard to find. So now I have at least a pointer in the code which I can quickly see. Formatting. So, as I said before, all the members of the team should work with the same formatting settings, otherwise you have these nice little false changes in the version control system and you need a long way to look for the real changes to your code. What you also should do if you're using prefixes or suffixes for your variables, please tell your IDE that you are using prefixes, for example. So if you have every variable called like m underscore, please tell your IDE that it is m underscore, because otherwise it won't generate the getters and setters correctly for you. So if you generate getters and setters, you don't want to have them be called get m field, you just want to have them called get field. So tell your IDE that you're using a prefix and it will remove it for you when generating getters and setters. So what other options do you have here? For example, in NetBeans, we can see that we have some formatting options here. For example, where we want to have a new line, if you want to have a new line before each else statement, and so on. So this is what you can set up in the formatting options. Templates. What is templates? Templates can be used for code snippets you often need. You can create a template for that. So if you, for example, do some UI coding and you really often need a certain piece of code to create a button with a text on it, for example, just create a template for it and you can use the template to quickly generate code for you. That's how it looks like, for example, in IntelliJ. We have a template here called ITCO, which generates some code to iterate with an iterator over Java util collection. So here we have the template itself. This in dollar is the placeholders. So we have some placeholders in our code here. The other thing is normal code. And the IDE will try to fill in the correct variable names which are currently active in the context you are triggering the template. To trigger the template, we will also see later in the live demo, you just put in the name ITCO and trigger the content assist, and it will insert the template for you. And what you can also do with templates is have copyright notices in your files, and maybe you don't like the smart code which is generated for the java.commons by default for Eclipse, for example. If you generate a getter and setter, it will have this nice get something, which doesn't say anything, so you can also change it there and just remove the code from the template so it doesn't do that anymore. So let's go on to another demo for content assist and refactoring. So I will start. I found a very, very cool code snippet on the internet. And if I go here, no, actually it's in the internet, so it's in the browser. So I have this very cool code snippet, I really want to use it. So what I can do is just copy the code snippet and paste it on the folder in my IDE. So I can just say paste or Ctrl-V. And it will automatically create the type for me. So if I have some snippet, I don't have to create the type first and then put in the code. I can just paste it on the package and I have the code here. So now let's start with our person class. First, I need a constructor, so I use a template for that. CRSTR, it's called for me. Control space, and here's my template, and I can just complete it. So I have a new constructor now. What I usually do is when I need some fields in my class and I will pass them in with the constructor, I usually start like that. So I just generate the constructor and start with the field names as parameters. So I need a name and an age from a person, and then I use a quick fix. So this got yellow here, which says, okay, probably you want to do something with the parameters. And what it can do is just generate the fields for me. So I toggle the quick fix and say assign parameter to new field, say assign parameter to new field, and I'm done. What I also like to have is some getters for my new fields. So I like to have a get age and a get name. I can just type in get and trigger the content assist, and it will propose me generate a getter for my name field. So I do that. What we also need is some equals and hash code. If I like to override a method, I just start to type equals and I hit the content assist and generate an equals method. That is not really useful, right? It's just an empty method. We don't want that. So let's go to the top of our class. I can have a quick outline, and there I can quickly type and go to the top of my class. And there we see, okay, there is something which is wrong, which says the type person should also implement hashcode if it overrides equals. And I say, okay, please fix it for me, generate hashcode and equals. It asks if it should override the old equals method. I say yes. Here you can choose the fields which you like to include, and I say okay, and we are done. Very simple. So let's have a new method, right? We can have a template for that. So for example, here's a public method template, which will generate the stuff for me. And we will have a method called, let's call it use object. And we will pass an item. I don't have an item yet, but I don't care now. I really like to structure my code and just to think about my code. I don't really care if it exists or not. So we need an if-else, so here's the template for that. If item is usable, return item.useThis, and else just return false, I don't care. So we have some nice little code here, it doesn't compile, but there's a quick fix for that. So let the IDE just generate an interface for us, no problem. And if I like to go back to my last edit location, there's also a shortcut for that. Then it says, okay, there's no methods in that. You like to call some methods, so you have to create them. Okay, let's create the methods for us. And then I can also go back with another shortcut, which is Alt left, at least in Eclipse. And I create the other method too, and then we are done. And I can also go back via Ctrl E, which is quick switch the editor, and I can go back to the person class as well. So now we have a nice little method fully generated for us, more or less. Then let's try to call our code. I need a new person for that. So I'm taking myself as an example. 29. What I also like is, if I'm staying here and I like to complete my statement with a semicolon, I can just do that. So I type a semicolon here and it goes to the end. And now I need a variable to actually call my method. So I say abstract local variable from it, and it's much easier than just to start typing person. A person is gleich new person. So, right, so we can do that. And in the next line, we just call a method. Our method is called useObject, and we should pass in an item, but we don't have an item, it's only an interface. So what do? We just create an item. So we want to have a boat, for example. There isn't a boat class, so we just use a quick fix, create the boat class, and it will say, okay, you have to implement the item interface. It will just complete it automatically for us. So I say finish, and we have this new class here. We just have to implement our methods. First is usable, we just will return true, nothing special. For the use method, we will also just return true, but we like to have a little trace statement so that we can see that our code is actually used. There's a template for that called systrace. And I really like to also output the person parameter, so I say, okay, I'll just output the person for me. This looks really ugly, right? So we probably want to change that with a quick fix and say use message format instead for the string concatenation. So that looks much nicer like that. So if we go back to our code now, to the person class, and we see here, we call the method useObject. That's not really right, because we are passing an item, so probably we want to refactor that to say, okay, it's useItem now. So let's do that. And then we want to see, okay, what do we do in this useItem method? We can quickly jump into it. And we want to see what is implementing our use method. I mean, right now we know it, but if we don't know it, we can just trigger the quick hierarchy outline, which says all the types implementing or defining the item.use method. And I can quickly go to the boat, and I'm directly in the use method. So I don't need this old systrace statement anymore. So I just like to put it into a new method, which looks much nicer. So I can have an extract method. I just mark my text, which I want to go to the new method, and say extract method. This is refactoring. And we have a new method called log. And now we really want to keep track of the persons which have been using our boat. So we will put it into a hash map, or a map in general, and we just say map put, oh, now switch to English, cool. Person get age, and we quickly create a field for that because a field map does not exist. We create a field for that. With tab we can go through this. So this is highlighted when I use some auto-generated stuff. You can see the boxes here, and you can toggle through the boxes with the tab. So you can quickly jump over there. And we want to have a map of from person to integer, really nice. And we want to be it a hash map. I can use camel case here as well. So if I want a hash map, I just put an HM control space, and it will complete to a hash map. Cool. And when I save, I have organized imports as well. So it will import the map for me. And what we see here now is some autoboxing statement. So get age is only primitive and int, and it will autobox to my integer. So, right, I think we don't need this log method anymore because now we have some proper content. If we want to delete the log method, there is no option in Eclipse to safely delete a method. Other IDEs have this refactoring, save delete a method. If you want to do it in Eclipse, just empty the body of the method, and call the inline refactoring. And if you inline the method with an empty body, it will go away. Okay, we will come back later to our nice little code to actually test it. And now let's get back to the slides first. So here's an overview of the refactorings. What is good about refactorings is that you usually just change the structure of your code, but it should preserve the behavior. There's some refactorings in it which might break the behavior as well, so be careful when using refactorings in your IDE, please. Yeah, you should have some test cases and run them before and after the refactoring. And there's really a lot of refactorings in the IDEs. This is some refactorings which IntelliJ has. So have a look at them. If you want to do something, you probably go better with the refactoring than doing it by hand. There's some other stuff in your IDE which you might want to use for Java development. For example, static code analysis. Our static code analysis helps you to find bugs before you actually run your code. So if you have some structural errors in your code, for example, like null pointer dereference, which we have here. So in NetBeans it's called hints, and here we have the hints, and we want to see probable bugs when we compile the code and not only when we run the code. And here's, for example, null pointer dereference. So if I didn't initialize a variable, it will show me here's a possible null pointer reference. You should probably check for null before calling a method. So this is really nice. You can also install plugins for PMD and find bugs, which are available for all the different IDEs, which are really good code analysis tools. And NetBeans also has a very powerful inspect and transform. So if you want to go from Java 6 directly to Java 8, you can just tell NetBeans to apply all the new features for you automatically to transform your code base to use all the cool new stuff. For example, converting all your anonymous classes to lambdas. I don't know if it works, but it's a try. So here's how you can do the trick with the external tools. So in your IDE you can define external tools configurations, and here's what I did for the Explorer window in Eclipse. I just say, okay, open the Explorer on the current selection. I say my program is the Explorer. I put in the parameters, /select is a normal statement, and here's a placeholder from my IDE which passes the actual file path. So you can have some external tools you use on a daily basis. You don't have to find the files anymore. You just can configure it as an external tool in your IDE and use it directly. Okay, let's actually test the code we have written before. And we do this in the debugger. I'm sorry. Let's go to our main class. And the debugger, everybody uses breakpoints. But did you know you can also set breakpoints not only in normal code lines, but also on classes, for example. So you have a breakpoint on class load, on fields, for field modification or field reads, on constructors, and on methods. On methods is really nice if you're using a third-party framework and you want to know when a certain method is called. You don't have the source code, you can't do it that way, but you can also do it on the outline and say toggle method breakpoint, for example. That works also. All right, then let's just debug our nice little code here. Debug as Java application. And now we have this annoying mode in Eclipse, which I don't like. So the first thing we have here right now is a breakpoint for class load of the person, which we set earlier. And if I let the program run again, which is a shortcut F8, for example, and then we have the breakpoint on our constructor, and I see I've done something wrong here because my age is not 29, it's actually 30. So I should quickly correct that, and if I don't want to start over the program again because I'm in the middle of a debugging session and I really had a long way to go there, I can just quickly change the parameter here, and I say change value. I just change it to 30, and it will go on running with this new value. So if I let it run again, and here's another breakpoint which is called modification of field H. I don't want to see that anymore in the future, so let's quickly turn it off. And if I step over this again, you can see my new person exactly has the same, has the age I really wanted to see. So I'm 30 now. Okay, let's go on in our debugging session. The next thing we have is a call to get age. Where is it coming from? From the boat use method we have written earlier. And well, I'm right over the part which I really wanted to debug. So what do? I wanted to debug this part here, and I want to see what's in the item.isUsable method. Why did I come in this branch in the first way? So what I can do is, with the context menu, say drop to frame. With drop to frame, I can restart debugging at this point again. So now I can jump into the isUsable method and see, okay, it's not really doing anything. Right. So if we go into our use method again, where we've been before, what we can see here is we have a person. Yeah, we have a person, but we can't see the content of the person. So if we don't have access to the framework, so in our case we could just generate a toString method to see what's in this person. But if we don't have access to the source code, we can just go with the detail formatter. With the detail formatter, I can just say, okay, for every person type, please show me the name. And now I have the name here. I can have a different column which still shows me the type. So now I can see both here. So let's step over this location. We have this nice little method breakpoint here. So if we have something in our map now, we probably want to see what's in our map. So if we want to see what's in our map, we have this nasty little representation here, and we don't really want to see the internals of the map, right? So here's a nice little button which says show logical structure. With the logical structure, I just see the entries in my hash map, which is a much nicer representation. So what I can also do is show where's my person reference from. So here's this nice little arrow window where you have some additional options like show references. So if you want to see where your instance person is referenced from, you just go here and see where it's referenced from. So our program runs well. We are finished with this debugging session. I just want you to show a nice additional little trick. And if you're running some concurrency code, you might run into a deadlock. So here's my little class. I'm transferring money from one bank account to another. This should happen once a second. And if I run my code, I just run it in a debugging session. You will shortly see why I do that. And so it only has two outputs here. I should see by far more outputs now if I have outputs once a second. So there's something going wrong. So I go to my debug session, and let's have a look at the threads. Yeah, there are two threads running here. So that could be a possible deadlock. I can't see anything. So I can click on the pause or on the suspend button here if I have it running in debug mode, and it will show me what's currently happening in those threads. And what you can see here is I can directly see that the threads are now marked in red, because we have a nice little option here, Java show monitors. With show monitors, it will try to detect a deadlock, and it shows the monitors the different threads are currently owning. So here we can quickly see that one thread is owning the bank account with ID 18 and is waiting for 17, and 17 is waiting for 18. So we have a classic deadlock situation here. So that is how your IDE can help you, at least with very simple situation, to detect them easily. Okay, let's go back to the rest of my slides now. And we have some additional parts here. As we have learned yesterday, the release of Java 8 is on March 18th. There is the current release candidate out you might want to test in your current projects. NetBeans and IntelliJ already have Java 8 support in their released versions. Eclipse has an update site, so you can install the Java development tools for Java 8 preview directly into your current Kepler instance. So you can try out all the Lambda fun in Eclipse now too. And what IntelliJ does, what's really nice, is it now collapses anonymous classes by default to Lambda style. So the code gets more readable, but you still have it Java 7 compatible. If you want to convert it to new Lambda style, you can also do it by the option Analyze, Inspect Code, and find and replace anonymous classes with Lambda expressions. And the same is available for NetBeans. So you have it in the menu with Source, Inspect, and Transform. And in Eclipse, you also have it as a hidden cleanup option. If you go to Source and Cleanup, then you can change the profile and just display this stuff too. All right, more information where you can get all the information from. Did you actually know that your IDE has built-in help pages? Yeah, I never read them, but it has really good help. So if you go and look for the help pages, most of the stuff in my talk is from the sections like getting started tips and tricks and important shortcuts. And if there's a new release coming out, there's usually a new and noteworthy section, so you can get quickly up to date with that. If you have some bugs or missing features in your IDE, you can fix them yourselves. If you have a missing feature, you can create a plugin. They all have a nice little API to create a plugin. And you should, if you find a bug, file a bug report, because otherwise it might never get fixed. So, as a summary, please explore the features of your favorite IDE. It usually only takes you like 1 or 2 hours to get the most useful features out of the help pages or some additional resources, because you should really know the tools you're working with. It makes you complete your work much faster. And be lazy, let the IDE do the work for you. Just use the content assist, quick fixes, and templates to generate code for you. Create the right settings you want to use for your whole team or in your company, which are made according to your programming style. And you should probably do learning shortcut sessions in regular time intervals. For example, with this Eclipse plugin mouse feed, it usually can prohibit action which is triggered by the mouse and tell you the right shortcut, so you have to use the shortcut to trigger the action. So it's a really nice plugin. Right, so we're at the end of my talk now. Is there any questions? Yes, please.
Yes, in Eclipse, how do you trigger auto-formatting of Java files on save, which is true?
There is save actions in the preferences. If you go to the preferences and just type in save action in the nice little text field, and then there are save actions, and you can configure the save actions to do whatever you want on save. For example, organize imports, put in missing annotations for override and deprecate it, and so on. So you can do it from there. So, there. Yes, I'm actually using the code recommenders 2.0 version in my IDE, and you can also have some subwords completions, for example. So if, I don't have to type a get name, for example. I can just type a name and say autocomplete. It will autocomplete to get name, if that answers your question. All right. Some more questions? All right, then thank you for attending my talk.